Hey, welcome everybody to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, guys, I'm Brian Doyle, and with me is Tim McNeil, my co-host. But more important than the two of us, we've got Willis Cantey from Cantey Tech Consulting, and he's joining us today. I've had the pleasure of doing a few things with Willis now and seeing him out at IT Nation. And like most of the relationships I've gotten to know in the last 4 or 5 months, we got to thank Abe Garver for this one, of course, because Abe made the original introduction. And we're really excited to have Willis join us today to talk a little bit about, his growth trajectory, but more about what it's like to be under the umbrella of a private equity organization and what unique strategies their particular brand is doing to grow the organization, find new MSPs coming in, and what that opportunity really can be to an MSP who's thinking about being targeted. So with that said, Willis, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Brian. I'm excited about this. Tim, great to get to know you over 30 seconds before the call. Yeah. I'm ready to get started.
So, Willis, we always love to kick these things off with just learning a little bit about you. Tell us how you launched into this industry and what drove you to become an MSP, and maybe a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Certainly. So I've been doing this for 14 years, but before that, it wasn't part of the plan. I've been in tech since college, one way or another, and finished business school and went to go work at Xerox in their headquarters in their emerging markets group, and got lucky enough to work in New York during the dot-com boom. Unfortunately, I started right as that bubble stopped and popped. So worked in New York for about 3 years doing that, moved back to South Carolina, which, as you can tell, this accent is not a New Yorker accent. Moved back here and worked for a software company for several years, but always wanted to go back and work at that small technology type of environment. Because at a small company, you can make a big difference. Sometimes that's a positive, and sometimes you make big mistakes that hurt you for a while. But did that about 14 years ago, and we've turned this MSP from a very small operation to about 80 folks now on our team, and we help clients in 17 different states.
Awesome. That's great. So, with that being said, as an MSP, what are some of the things that you've seen over your time, right? Besides the obvious, right? You've seen a number of different transitions of really go-to-market strategies and how quick we have to adapt in this marketplace. But, what are some of the personal ups and downs that you've experienced as you were growing your business? What were some of the gotcha moments out there that you weren't expecting?
Well, the personal experience can be evidenced by the graying of my hair that up.
You say that to a guy who's white.
Yeah. I'm getting that. It's my even though I've got my wings going, but they are increasingly turning gray.
It is not a stress-free life that we've chosen, but I do like it. I'll tell you, we see a lot of change in the space that have been positive. But when we started off, we joke around that when we had 2 technical resources and one would call in sick, we had lost half of our productivity with that sick call. And if one of them had the flu, we were sort of socially isolating before that was a thing, because we couldn't afford to have both of them sick. But those early days, as any MSP can tell you, were difficult. And you go through these phases. Some people call them the black holes, where you've got to, all of a sudden you're having to hire a team, and part of that management of that team is not billable or not as billable. And so your profitability takes a hit, but you have to do that to reinvest in the business. And we still do that. We still have some of the same problems. When we lose good people, it is still a major issue, even when you have 80 folks. So we're working through that. The cloud has been a good thing for us. Remote working has been a good thing for us. Clients taking security more seriously and forcing us to take security seriously as well has been good for us. So that's helped us grow. And we managed to grow in different verticals. Some folks specialize, and that may be the smart way to do it, but it's not the way we've done it, because we found that clients want the same fundamental things, no matter whether you're a medical practice or a law firm or a small business. And we do a lot in education now. And that was a vertical that wasn't that large for us, and now is about a third of our business.
Wow. That's some growth in one spot. You know, it's true at the infrastructure layer. Almost all businesses have the same requirements, right? It's security, it's keeping the flow going. It's the line of business applications that change and some of the wraparound needs. So, I've seen that go both ways too. The specialization work, does it not work? It depends on the MSP you're talking to, but I've seen a lot of great ones out there that are more general by nature.
Yeah,
you got to sort of reflect your market, right? Tim, I'm sure you see this too. If there's sales opportunities in different verticals, we're in the South Carolina market predominantly, but we're in other places too. Our client base reflects what our market is.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's much easier to be specialized if you're in a New York City or in a big market. Right. I know somebody very well who had an MSP in the New York City area that only focused on financial firms. And they did an amazing job. They grew that MSP to a huge multiple. But look, we once had a client in Dothan, Alabama. I promise you in Dothan, Alabama, you can't be that choosy. So it just depends on where you are and the stack that you have and how you implement it with the clients that you do have. It's very area dependent, I would say.
Right. And you better believe that all of those different verticals, one of the areas where we try to compete is, and where we're proud of our record is responsiveness. So if every single one of those folks, if they have an insurer, you want to work with them proactively so they don't have issues, but that never works every time, right? Of course, they're going to have issues. You got to be responsive to that. You got to be professional. You got to be organized in your response. And you got to have good communication with those clients so that they'll tell all your friends about you or all their friends about you. So that referral way of selling, and Tim, I'm sure you've done this with your clients, is the best way to get in the door.
It is. A client referral, a warm lead of some nature is always going to be the best way to get it. But that was going to be one of my questions. I mean, you've grown to a pretty substantial size by MSP standards. Have you done it only through or primarily through client referrals? Have you had other forms of growing it, whether it be account managers internally growing that client base or salespeople who are externally going out and shaking hands, kissing babies, bringing in business that way? What's been your primary factor?
Well, you forgot one angle, and that is, Willis, did you just get lucky? And part of that's in there too. But I did get lucky in there's several reasons that I think we've been able to grow. And some groups have grown a lot more quickly than we have, and that's great. But we've done about 20% a year every year for the last 14 years. And we've done that several ways. One is we have been lucky with the team that we brought in. Bring in a great salesperson and business development person matters. It makes a lot of the difference. And I wore that hat for a while, but then we've added on since then, of course. And it does get harder to grow at that rate every year as you grow larger. But bring on a great sales manager, sales team, business development outlook is important. Secondly, we sort of expanded what we were doing. We talked to our clients and found out what they wanted. So we have new offerings. We're still developing new offerings today. That allowed us to move, for example, into the virtual charter school space where we do a lot of work. That allowed us to do a lot with student information systems. So that area has been a growing area for us. And also we found that we can do this in different markets remotely, and we were doing that well before COVID. So that allowed us to do it as well. And then two, you don't grow if you're adding new clients all the time, but the old ones are walking out the door by the dozens. So you've got to have good client retention. That is just as important to growth as anything. And then finally, we've been fortunate that we are in a growing, thriving market, right? People are moving to our area, businesses thriving, big employers, big opportunities. So a rising tide, we can't take all the credit for it. That does lift our boat as well. So how do you get out and be visible? We're out and actively visible in peer groups and organizations, not necessarily MSP peer groups. Those folks know how to solve their IT problems. But in the Chamber of Commerce, I was the chairman of the chamber here, in business associations, and we're visible throughout the state. And we like to hire business leaders that people know to work in our groups. Some people get a lot of business with online marketing. For us, that is not nearly successful as somebody knowing somebody else has had a good experience with you.
Well, there's the old adage, right? Half the battle showing up. And if you can be part of a community, embed yourself in the community, where do people want to help? They want to help their community, right? And I think that's an interesting approach too, where you're really looking for leaders versus people that have the background necessarily just in tech, right? You know, I've always felt that way too. If you can really find good leaders, you can teach them the tech part, at least enough that they need to know to lead, right? So definitely, you know, a great approach there in looking at a different way of hiring. Because I think, you know, I was reflecting back to when you said, you know, even with 80 people, it's tough when we lose somebody. And the reality is it's tough to lose somebody because you still have to replace that somebody with somebody else of equivalent or better status, hopefully. And as we're all seeing in the IT industry, that talent is getting tougher and tougher to find because there's more and more opportunity for the talent that's out there, you know, being created every day.
Yeah. It is. I don't want people to leave Cantey Tech Consulting. I wanted to work out for us and for them. And so we try to make it a compelling place to be. We've got a mission and we're trying to go after this and we're growing. And when you grow, you know, if you grow 20% a year, you're doubling in about every 3 years that you are 3.5. Opportunities open up. So we hope that creates some excitement and some opportunities to hire from within and grow people from within, in addition to bringing in folks from the other side. But when people leave, they get a job in a week.
Yep.
So it is. Absolutely. We joke around. If you're good at technology support, if you can explain technology to folks that know it's important but that don't know how it works, your unemployment rate might be 1.5%. Right. And those 1.5% are figuring out their next move. Yeah. So it is a tight market.
Yeah, and you hit upon another, you know, great statement. If you can rise people from within, they become your best recruiters, right? Because everybody's looking for an opportunity where they're not going to get pigeonholed. That's always, you know, when you interview people, what do you want to, you know, what's the greatest response? What do you want to do in the next 5-10 years? I want to grow within my position and professionally. So if you can actually find those seats and be able to show those seats, you know, those people filling those seats are telling anybody that's even close to the industry, you should come work here. There's a real opportunity versus some of your competitors where, you know, those people have had those seats forever and there's not new ones being created to support growth and expansion.
I think that's in my opinion, that's a large mistake that a lot of MSPs make. They try and buy their way into a position instead of growing within. You know, you get somebody at a lower wage and really teach them every aspect of the company from a tech side and grow them into a position. It's always going to be better. Too many times, and we see it often with people that we talk to, sometimes our clients, they try and buy their way into a high-end tech thinking that that's going to solve all their problems, when the best way to do it is just do it from within. It's always, every time.
And you know, we're lucky. So far in January, we've promoted 4 people from within, and we've hired 3 people from the outside. And so you've got to have a mixture of both when you're growing. But but we have a system. We bring in junior techs onto the team. We used to call, and they're paid, right? We used to call them interns, but clients said, don't send an intern every year. So we didn't. We
sent a junior tech.
And we have 3, and that is in our notion, that's an escalator up into a full-time good position in the company. And sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes less than that. But we always want to have those positions filled, and we send them out and they help the folks in the field, and they're good and they're eager to learn. And those folks, one of them is now one of our senior managers. So that's what you hope for.
And the other side of the coin, by doing it that way too, you're also helping them to their next step in their career. So if the opportunity doesn't present themselves within your organization, it's just that seat isn't there. It's occupied. It's not changing. You know, one of the things I used to always say to the young folks that were looking at us, especially when we were at our early stages and we couldn't be cost competitive from a salary standpoint, hey, The one thing we can offer you is you're going to get your hands on more technology in the next 3 years than you ever will by taking a corporate job sitting in the corner managing one thing. That will translate to more dollars for you later in your life. If you believe that, and if you're in it for the marathon, do so. And some of the guys that we couldn't promote up, I mean, when they came to me, they were all upset, worried about telling me that they were going to leave the organization. And I was like, no, it's time, shook their hands and said, how can I help you? Because I don't have the opportunity you need and you're ready for it. And that's really a big part, I think, we have as a responsibility. And that might be a nice dovetail, Willis, into what you're doing today too, because those characteristics, I think, are playing into the way you're looking to grow Cantey Tech and some of the changes that you've come up with or run into over the course of the last, 6 or 8 months for your company.
Right. So, and I'll tell you one thing, to agree with you, Brian, on one piece, there was always, when you're running an MSP or I'm running an MSP, there's always a corporate job where back in the day, you could have made more money being the exchange administrator.
Yeah.
And you're responsible for that box.
Yeah, you do this one thing every day, all day.
Right. And you could be great at it, and you could be good. You get the benefits and work your way up and do this. Most of the folks that work for us don't find that compelling. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with those exchange administrators and they can't branch out and other things. That's not what I'm saying. But the job for a 5,000 person company might have been you're the exchange administrator, and or your life is in Active Directory and only in Active Directory. With folks that work at an MSP, Cantey or otherwise, every day is not like glass. Sometimes you would like for one day to be like the other day.
Just like one day to finish up like our schedule says it was going to.
Of course, but we try to create that sense of, hey, if you're not better in a year than you are right now, then absolutely shame on us. We're not doing something right. But I don't know anybody that can say that coming out of Cantey or other MSPs. So to tell you a little about what we're doing is we had good growth. We were excited about it, but I started thinking, okay, we want to expand to other markets and grow this regionally. And I looked at, can I afford to buy other MSPs? Mm-hmm. And maybe I could have done that 10 years ago. It is very expensive today. This is a hot market. There's a lot of competition. Mm-hmm. I don't want to underpay for somebody's business. That's not what we want to do. Frankly, I want to pay top dollar and get top folks. So I started looking, okay, if I can't do this with my own money and with some bank debt and finance side, you can maybe do that one time. But more than that, it gets difficult when you're looking in the markets and at the type of MSPs that we're looking at. What can I do? So I spoke with private equity groups. I spoke with investment banks. I spoke with individual strategic buyers. I spoke with all sorts of folks. And really, I did have some great help from Abe at Focus Investment Bank. But I didn't run a process through them. I sort of ran a process on my own. I narrowed it down to 11 different groups. And 11 means you're not really narrowing it down. You're looking at too many. So I don't recommend that. But I did find that we wanted to be a platform. And at our size, we were big enough to do that. We wanted to be a platform that was bringing other groups that wanted to be a part of us. I'm not looking to buy if it was, Tim McNeil MSP, where Tim says, look, I'm taking off. Half of my team wants to take off, but you can just have this client less than a couple.
Have the deck. Yeah.
That's not what we're excited about. We're looking at groups in the Southeast where the ownership and management team wants to stay on board with us. We're looking at real integration. We believe the integration happens. It happens now or it happens later. At one point it happens. But I also found a partner in a private equity group that was patient, that would rather do this carefully and slowly. And if we do 5 integrations over the next 5 to 7 years, great. We'd rather do 5 good ones than 15 sloppy ones. And I'm beginning to see some of that in the market. I'm pretty in touch with some of the other platforms that are doing this, and that they will admit it becomes a grab. And that's not the way I think you deliver great service to your clients. That's not the way I think you get your team motivated behind this. It feels like just a big financial exercise, which is not the reason I went into this in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at folks that they want to build something special and have shown a record of growth too. And the growth can be different. It doesn't have to be the same as us. It can be more or less.
Yep.
Mhm.
But we've always felt like, okay, if you can bring in other MSPs that are in our region that I can drive to or get to fairly quickly, that we can stay in touch. Even if another COVID variant shows up, I still want to be on site seeing people, at times. That we can stay in touch and do this, then you can really build something special and unique as opposed to trying to build a conglomerate across the oceans type of scenario.
Well, I'll speak to it from the past, so we're not going to shame any of the people that are in the game today. But many years ago, we were courted by, if you guys remember, All Covered, which ultimately got bought by Konica, and it was such a land grab, the chaos that went even with their teams to structure the deals, because they were trying to do 50 deals in 50 weeks. And they had people on a plane coming from California, to your point, to Connecticut, where we were, theoretically to sign the deal. And then those people turning around when they hit Dallas because the whole thing fell apart. And it was because they didn't have communication and structure. So, I applaud you, and more importantly, your finance teams too, for having that mind shift of, hey, this is an investment. And it's an investment that's going to take a little bit of time. And let's make sure we grow this in a manner where we can integrate those companies in. You can do the transition of their team into it. You can get them into the culture mix and then continued expanding from there. Because that's where things break down heavily. Yeah. If you don't have a good transition team, it falls apart.
I'll tell you too, is that you got to go, if you're an MSP and you're thinking about this, you got to go with where it feels right. This is personal, right? Yeah. You better believe Cantey Tech is personal. 14 years of my life, and there are a lot of groups that have worked in other things. This is the culmination of what I've built in my best, right? I have given it my best. My team gives it their best. We give it our best to do it. And when you're slopping it together with something else, it feels so wrong. We try to say this is business. This is not personal. You better believe it's personal when I get an email from a client that's unhappy, whether I know them or not. Or you better believe it's personal when I have somebody that's good on the team and they're leaving. And you got to believe it's personal too when we have success or we see somebody move up. So this racing it together and all of this, and if you want to do it in 3 years or 2 years, because some of these platforms are sort of in the latter part of their backing, right? It's time for them to think about the next
make that
life.
Execute.
Yeah. We're at the very beginning. So I'm looking at folks that want to build this and ride this. And we have a longer time frame than most of the other ones. And that gives us the opportunity to build something special. And two, I get a chance to work with people that I like. I mean, I'm the CEO. If I'm around people right now that I don't like, it's my fault.
Yeah.
That's a refreshing attitude right there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
You said, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that there is a huge land grab right now. And I do think there is a rush to be the biggest and the best. I mean, this perception of being the best, and at the end of the day, slow and steady wins the race. And getting people on, getting them integrated correctly, if you can do that, you're ahead of, you're ahead of just not everybody, but you're ahead of a lot of people. You're ahead of a lot of people just by doing it patiently and correctly.
Well, it's very hard if you're growing too fast. We had a year we grew too fast, right? If sales gets ahead of your ability to perform. And so slow and steady wins the race. We tend to stay steady, consistent growth wins the race. And so our target at over 20%, we can do that. And Tim will tell you, Brian, I'm sure you'll agree that getting that sales process right takes a lot of work and a lot of time. But once it starts to work, once you have that engine and you have 4 or 5 salespeople going and it's really clicking, you get more predictability out of your growth. And that really helps because you can forecast your hiring needs and your training needs. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't take a fantastic February coming up that was out of sorts, that it was so good and positive, we would still take it. We would make it work. But it's better when you have a big pipeline and a pretty good predictability plan of your pipeline of that closing, that you can forecast that out. It definitely helps.
Well, goes hand in hand with what you were saying earlier about the personal piece of it, right? This is, the business should be personal. In your case, literally your name's on the door, but it is the one thing you build, we all feel close to. And at the end of the day, most of these companies never get to that size where they should ever really lose the personal touch. Even as you go acquire 5 or 6 companies over the next few years, you're still going to be at a size that there still should be that personal touch. And, I think that goes hand in hand with delivery, right? If you sell too quickly and you can't deliver, all you're doing is tarnishing your reputation, tarnishing the name of the company, and ultimately costing yourself in the long run, right? So it's a tough balance, and somebody's got to be at the helm doing it. So I don't envy you there. So, Willis, we're getting near the end of our time today. Maybe you can kind of give just a brief overview. You've touched upon it in a variety of different ways, but maybe tell us who the ideal prospect of potentially joining forces with Cantey Tech Consulting might, what they might look like and what traits really would fit in your organization.
So first and foremost, we're looking for people that want to stick around and want their management team to stick around. We're not cost cutters. That's not our dream, right? That's not. I don't want to go in there and make those types of changes in the company so that we can give this return. We're looking for growth-oriented people that are excited about what they're doing, that still have that willingness to grow. And also, we're looking for building a peer group of our own. So there are all sorts of great peer groups, and I encourage that, and we have been involved in them in the past and are involved in one now. But I think by bringing several business owners together, you effectively create a very dynamic peer group internally. So we're looking for that. We're looking for partners and folks that want to take some chips off the table, but roll some equity moving forward. Now, in terms of revenue, we've got flexibility on what we're doing there. I could tell you that we're looking for $3 to $5 million in revenue, but we're also looking at a $15 million revenue opportunity. I'm looking at one that is smaller than that currently. But there gets to be a certain point, if you're below $1 million in revenue, that it might not make sense for you. And I've had that conversation with several of these business owners that were at 1 to 2 million in revenue and said, I think we can do this. I know how this would work with the organization. I know you would come in. But the ability for you to take chips off this table might be limited just because the revenue is this size and the earnings are this size. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to do a deal with somebody that's not thrilled walking out of that deal.
Yeah. Well, you got to live with them after the fact, right? They've got to be part of the future.
Yeah,
so,
they're part of the team.
In any deal, a teeter-totter is going to lean one way or a little bit one way or the other. But, if you can get it as close to center as possible, everybody comes in working together instead of, somebody feeling a little shaky about it all.
Well, we also believe that there are folks that are, and people are honest about this. I mean, you might as well be transparent in the process. There are folks looking for a quick flip, right? And there are folks looking to build something together with you. And we're looking at folks that are in different verticals. You don't have to be in the education vertical to work with us. You don't have to be in the legal or medical vertical with us. There's one group that we're talking to that says, I didn't want to deal with lawyers or doctors, so we don't do any of that work. And I said, man, I didn't know that was an option 14 years ago. But they built it up, and they built up a great business in their market. So we're looking for that. And I do think the Southeastern United States is different, not just because we talk in a funny way, but I do think there's a little bit different way that we'd like to treat our clients and the relationships that we have with them. And so we're looking to build a group that's focused on that region. And when I see the Southeast, I'm talking about the DC area over to Texas, and they've told me this many times, Texans are not Southeast, they're not Southwest, they're Texas.
Yeah, they're their own people.
So maybe I should say Southeast over to Texas, but we are very excited about that. And we are patient and careful, and the group backing us, LNC Partners, has been wonderful. I call them a lot more than they call me. They are not operating partners, they are financial partners. but I reach out to them for a lot of help and advice. And so it's been a great relationship. They're out of Virginia and are patient and careful like we are.
Willis, I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about the background and, what a company that's thinking about a roll up. It's another perspective. It's another voice out there in the community, letting them know, for those that might have a fear of what that future looks like, that the future doesn't necessarily fall into just the chop shop mentality. Come in, we're going to roll you up, and we're going to roll, and ultimately we're going to roll out. That there really can be a future in that, as long as they find the right partner. So thank you for sharing.
Willis, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. For anybody listening to MSP Business School, you can find this podcast as well as any of our other podcasts on any avenue or channel that you would get them normally, to include YouTube for those of you who want to check us out in person. So again, Willis, it was great having you on. It was very interesting to hear about how you've grown and how you're looking to move forward in the future. And hope to have you on again soon, and best of luck.
Great. Well, Tim, thank you. And Brian, thank you. This has been a real pleasure and a good time, and would love to come back again.
Sounds great. Well, I think, the right time to get you is after you integrate in one of the first companies under your umbrella. I think it'll be great to talk about what that story is too, and keep that that momentum going.
Yes. Well, I want that to be soon.
That I hope so. All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you very much again, Willis. And Tim, I'll see you again soon.
Yes, sounds good.
Take care.